Nau mai haere mai, kua hau te tumaki o te kura o tōna tahi. I'm the principal here at Dargaville Primary School, and I am the expert at BSLA, and I teach all these ladies how BSLA works. I'm giving them the chance to share their ideas with you. Actually, I know very little about BSLA other than the evidence that's telling us that it is having an impact on our kids. Nicole and the team have worked hard to make this afternoon as informative as possible for you. We do appreciate everyone's busy and you've made the time to come in this afternoon. We are recording it, so it will go on our YouTube channel, so if you do need to re-watch it or something, it will be available on our YouTube channel. And I think the handouts are going to be on our Facebook page or Western School will be out to you as well. Nicole's going to be the presenter today. Maddie's just going to open up with a quick karakia, and then we'll move into it.
E te atua mana kitia mātou I te wā, hau mai au painga kia tutuki, ngā mai mahi ki te mua I a mātou. Āmenu.
Can you all hear me? It's better for me because I have a habit of turning and the microphone's out here and I drop out. So if I don't have to, I think that'll be better. So when I used to do these types of presentations at my old school, my boss at that time would always come up to me afterwards and give me feedback. Great information, Nicole, good chat, parents really enjoyed it. Just one tip, your face, when you do your presentation, something what about my face? And he would say to me, you look very serious, like too serious. So in the next 20 minutes, if you look at me and you think, wow, that lady is super grumpy today, it's not you, it's me, and it's my normal look when I start talking about literacy, because it's a serious topic, it's really important, and you obviously all think it's important too, or else you wouldn't have made the time to come and join us this afternoon. It's important because when you can read, school is a much easier place to navigate, right? The reality is, if you don't have adequate literacy skills, you can't access the full curriculum. That's it, that's fact. Life is easier when you can read, when you've got adequate literacy skills. More opportunities open up to you. So things like employment, salary, health and well-being, all those things can be affected by whether you have the literacy skills that you need or not. Okay. So I'm going to talk you through the why the changes in the way we teach literacy is happening in New Zealand. I'm going to talk to you about the what BSLA is, and kind of try to give you a picture of what it looks like in the classroom now. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about the how. So that's how you can help at home. How what happens at home really matters, and it has powerful impact as we're going to see. So the why. Well, you will have read about this, or you would have seen it on the newspaper. The bottom line is in New Zealand our literacy rates are declining, and they have been declining since about 2009. This was a report that came from the Education Hub in 2022, but they do quote, it was a UNICEF study in 2020 that showed that around 60% of our 15-year-olds in New Zealand are achieving above the most basic level of reading and reading, but what that means is we've got almost 40% of our 15-year-olds who are struggling with reading and writing. Back in the 80s, New Zealand led literacy in the world. We were top. Other countries were looking at what we were doing and saying, wow, how are they getting those results? So what the data is showing with the decline in literacy rates has really made educators stand up and take stock, reflect. Is there something more that we can be doing in class? Do we need to change what we're doing in class? And it's made a lot of our literacy specialists and our researchers take a good hard look at the data that we've been collecting in the studies on literacy to see what we can fathom. So if we just take a quick look at this model of how reading develops, Scarborough's reading rope, it gives us an indication of all the different skills and the knowledge that goes into making a reader. So I like to think about reading developing like this. It's like a rope, like there's lots of strands, and as those things become more automatic and our children get better at them, it creates this really strong rope. At the bottom, word recognition is really important. Word recognition, phonological awareness, decoding, and sight recognition. And what I'm going to show you in a moment is what we've been doing in class for quite a while now doesn't hit all three of these things. So there's two approaches to reading. The whole language approach, which is what you will have gone through school with. It's what a lot of us trained in when we were learning to teach. And it's based on this idea that if we immerse children in quality literature and we give them a print-rich environment, they will just slowly begin to pick up the patterns of language. It also does a lot, it also is a lot about meaning. So in a sentence, looking at meaning in context, looking at meaning in place of an emphasis on phonics and decoding skills. So when we come to a sentence and we don't know a word, it's what would make sense in that spot. So I'll give you an example. Weka says a shed. I wish I had a dish. Now if you were a reader who didn't know what the word, couldn't read the word shed, with a whole language approach, we would say something like, this old chestnut, have a look at the picture for some clues. Have a look at the picture for clues, see if you can work out what that word would be. What would make sense in that sentence? So, we don't know, we can pretend we don't know that word shed. What other words could go in place of shed? This is the interactive part of the talk. Just throw out some words. There are spot prizes. Anybody brave enough? You can get yourself a book. Instead of shed, if you looked at that, what would a child think? What words pop up?
The sheep.
Pardon? The sheep?
The sheep.
Okay, yep, beautiful, yes. Okay, what else?
Tree sky.
Yep, awesome. Other words for shed?
Barn.
Yep, okay. So, a new reader could come up with a hut, a barn, a building, a garage, a shack, a batch, a door. Okay, when you're reading text this simple, maybe it's not accurate, but maybe the meaning would be, there would be enough meaning there that they wouldn't notice. But you get onto more complicated text, and actually, this type of strategy is just not adequate. And researchers will tell you that these types of strategies, it's 50-50 whether a child's going to get that word right first time or wrong. If you're a good guesser and you guess the right word a lot, you're saying to yourself, I'm a reader, I've got this, I can do this. But if you're bad at guessing the right word often enough, frustration starts to set in. Why am I doing this? Because none of this is making any sense to me. Okay? So that's just one example of the whole language approach. The bottom line is when we look at the whole language approach, which is what we have been doing in classrooms for a long time now, not just in New Zealand, but in different parts of the world, it doesn't really hit on these top two strands in word recognition. Sight recognition, yes, because you'll be familiar with like sight words. You would have had them at school where you go home and you're busy memorising some of the words that come up often in text. So the other side, the other approach, is the structured language approach. And then what this does is it embraces a scientific and evidence-based approach to reading. It says we need to take the guesswork out of it for our young people, our young readers. Children need to understand that words are made up of sounds. And when we can break down and hear those sounds, when we can look at a word on a page and we understand that those letters in that word represents those sounds, we know the code. When we know the code, we can work out what any word is that we come across when we're reading. Okay. It's very structured and it follows a spoken sequence that will start with more simple sounds and it works up to more complicated parts of language. With the whole language approach, you might find that teachers teach some phonics, but it's not as structured. There will be gaps there. It doesn't follow a formula. Okay, so when you look at the structured language approach, phonological awareness, tick, decoding, tick, sight recognition, tick. Structured language approach also has been backed by research. It's also been proven to help children who have difficulties with reading, including children with dyslexia. So what we've got is an approach that helps or works with a broader group of students in our classroom. Okay, so as I was saying, it's made a lot of educators look at the declining rates in our country and around the world and say, what can we do? And so what you've seen is a lot of schools start to move towards a more structured approach. And it's been happening for a few years now. It's almost like a grassroots groundswell, because schools were saying, we're not waiting to find out if the ministry is going to say, give us some guidance on this or where the funding is. We want to do something that works for our students. We can see that we need to do something now. And so a lot of schools have adopted a structured language approach. The structured language approach that I'm going to talk to you about today, that we have been trialling at DPS last year and this year we are using in Year 1 and Year 2, is called BSLA. So it's the Better Start Literacy Approach, and it's developed by the University of Canterbury. What I like about this is because it's through the University of Canterbury, we know that it's based on data and research. Somebody hasn't sat in an office somewhere and said, I think this would be a fun idea if we got the students to do this. I think this would help. They've looked at research, they've looked at data and said, we know that if the children are doing this type of thinking, these type of activities, this is what is going to help them with their reading and their spelling. So it addresses vocabulary, letter knowledge, phonological awareness, and it does it all in a very systematic way through structured lesson plans and through planned games and activities. The structured lesson plans are fantastic because it creates this routine. Our students know what's coming up, they know how the games go. So their focus can be on the learning, not about, hey, what is it going to look like today, which is important. It follows a particular sequence, introducing children to letters and sounds. So I'm going to show you the scope and sequence, but I'm not going to go through it. Here we go. So you can see as we go through the different levels, Taumata 1 for example, we've just got the very simple consonants and the short vowels. As you start to move through the different levels, okay, word contractions, we've got vowel teams, which are really hard for our children to get their heads around. English language has a lot of these. It's a complicated language with a lot of different vowel patterns. And I just want to go back and say that with the Better Start Literacy Approach, BSLA, it involves monitoring children's progress, and this data is fed back to the University of Canterbury. I think that's great, and that's a real advantage to this program because it means that the data doesn't just sit there, they'll do something about that. What are we seeing? What patterns are we seeing? Because they're under no illusions that helping children with their literacy learning is a very complex thing. So they haven't said, right, we've got this program that's going to solve everything. They're saying we need to keep looking at the data we're getting and refining what we're doing. Okay, so as I was saying, there's the scope and sequence, and we talk about the different taumata. Okay, so in our classrooms, typically what you'll see are these components happening. So we will start with a book, a quality book, and we talk about the vocabulary that is in the book. If it's a storybook, we'll talk about the characters, we'll talk about the setting and the problems. If it's non-fiction, we might talk about summarising, we might make connections to what we already know about the topic that we're reading about. After that, we move into a section of the program that is called phoneme, graph and correspondence. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get our students to practice being aware of the different sounds in words, so continuing to develop their phonological awareness, and how we can manipulate that. So I'll talk you through some of the activities a little bit briefly, but we're going to learn a lot more when you go to the tables and talk to the people who've got resources down the back there. Then we will always have a link to reading and writing. So we will have a focus letter, a focus sound, or two focus sounds, and we will have focus words for that week. And what we try to do is we'll talk about building a sentence using those words. We might read books together as a whole class that have got that sound of the week in them. Okay, and then we still have our small group reading instruction. So the whole class program is fantastic, and that addresses the gaps that most of our students have. But of course, there's always an enormous spread. So when we do small group reading instruction, what we're doing is we're refining that teaching a little bit more. We're differentiating a little bit more to meet more of the needs of our students. Okay, so this was just an example of, and when we talk about how you can help at home, if you're reading books at home, I would push for fiction and non-fiction. So this term in my class, we've been looking at non-fiction text. I didn't have a lot of fiction fans, but non-fiction they love. And what you'll often find is children have got a lot of background knowledge. The text this will be too hard for them on their own. But because they have a lot of background knowledge, they love to contribute to the discussion and really engage with the text. So we've been reading about sharks, and I will pull out a couple of words, for example, like prey, and we talked about this idea of a shark taking a test bite. What does that mean? So we put that in other words. Here's me without, this is just an example of us with our sound of the week. Okay, and so we'll say each of those words, and I'll say, this is an O and an O, together they make the long O sound, as in these words, and I'll go through each word, hoot, and then I'll sound it out, hoot, hoot, your turn, and then, not your turn, but the kids' turn. Okay, and we go through those words, alright. So phoneme segmentation is a really important one. It's about developing children's ability to hear the individual sounds in a word. So how many sounds are in stop? Just have a little thing in mind and count on your fingers. Okay. So we've got 4 sounds in the word stop. I'm not going to ask you to put your hands up to say you've got it right or not. But yeah, so we go through this type of work with our students. And this is something really important that I think, I don't know about everybody else, but something that I notice, when we're asking children to break those words up into sounds, we'll ask them to write them down into squares, so they're dividing them up like this. Sometimes words are simple. 1 letter equals 1 sound. Sometimes words are trickier, for example, chick, okay, croak, and slide. Children might know how to spell the word chick, but when it comes to the C and the K together, they want to try and split that up. So it's that understanding the difference between I'm hearing the sounds in the word. Here are the sounds in the word versus here's every letter in the word. Okay? And so this is just an example, which we'll have down on the table there, of an activity that we do. So I'll say a word, like I'll say Zoom. Show me with the counters how many sounds are in the word Zoom. Okay? And the children use the counters to count out, down. I can hear 3 sounds. Some children might put 4, and that's when we talk about that double O. It's 1 sound, 2 letters, but it's 1 sound. A lot of the students really love word chains. So normally we don't have these words up on the board. This is another example of what we do when we're manipulating the sounds. So I would write the word Zoom up on the board, and I would say, if this says Zoom, can you make it say boom? So it's just 1 sound change. And the children will have their whiteboards, their whiteboard markers, and they're busy writing down. So they're writing out a list at the end. And then I'll put boom up on the board and I'll say, okay, great, you've got boom. Can you make it say room? And so they're just changing 1 sound each time. This is an example of what we're using now. So it's different to the colour wheel, the level breeders. What we're using is the Ready to Read Phonics Plus series. This has been put together, a lot of the names up there are the same people who have been developing the BSLA literacy program. So here's an example of, one of the easier books. So this book focuses on these sounds and it's in short words, okay? Tip, and a. And then we go into the book. you can see the words on the page use those sounds over and over again, those target sounds. And so the idea is that the children have plenty of opportunity to practice sounding out those words. One way that you can help your child to sound out a word is really important. Kids are getting fantastic in classes about sounding out, but it's that reminder to blend it back together. So Nat taps on at mat. It's finishing it off. And then let's run with that sentence again. Let's go through that sentence again. Nat taps on a mat so that they get at the sound level, they get at the word level, and then we put it together in that sentence. Okay, and this is really probably the most important part of what we're doing this afternoon, is really talking about how that partnership between home and school can have such a powerful effect on children's literacy learning. So these are the three facilitators of reading success. And the bottom is the cognitive component. So children's phonemic awareness, their vocabulary knowledge, their understanding of letter knowledge, and their listening comprehension skills. In the middle is our psychological component, and that's super important. Children have, I think it's in the first year of school, maybe in the second, so it's just a very short window really. In that first year, that's when they make up their mind, I'm a reader and a writer. And that first year is when children identify themselves as a reader and a writer, or if they don't. So that first 2 years is really, really vital. Motivation, self-perception, and their interests. Okay, what are they interested in reading about? Because we know that if we're putting those types of materials and those books in front of them, they're going to go towards those. If you're motivated because you're really interested in what you're going to read, you're going to show more resilience. You're not going to be mind being challenged so much about the text and that you don't know everything, every word in the text. But the biggest area is at the top, ecological component, home. School, cultural influences, and parental involvement. We found this really interesting as a staff. So this is a study that was done in 2016. It's done every 5 years, I think. It's a Progress in International Reading and Literacy study. And what they do is they look at the literacy levels of 10-year-olds. You can see the first set of bars is New Zealand, looking at New Zealand, and then Australia. And what they found is that children, parents who engaged with their children in early literacy activities often at home, those children, which are in red, in the red bars, okay, they made a lot more progress. You can see that compared to the blue bars, where it was children who sometimes had that engagement at home. So what you're doing at home makes a huge difference actually. It has a lot of impact. And these are some of the things that the parents were doing. Reading books, alphabet games, writing letters and words, playing word games, environment print, oral narrative, retelling stories, and talking about vocabulary in the books that you're sharing. So yeah, students whose parents reported often spending time with them on early reading related activities did significantly better in reading at 10 years of age. Other positive influences and factors, parents being good reading role models. I was thinking about that the other night, and I think it's changed a lot. Not because we're not reading as adults, but what we're reading on has changed a lot. How many people get the newspaper still in hard copy? Or are you reading it on a screen? So it can sometimes be hard. But what we want is for our young people to not think of reading as something that happens at school. We want them to know this is normal life. This is a life skill, right? So they need to be able to see us at home reading. This is what we do. Good access to quality children's books at home, but the library, public library, the school library, preschool attendance, strong foundational early reading skills, which is what we're trying to achieve with BSLA. Good readers are healthy, so they're not hungry or tired. I'm not sure what the bedtime is for New Zealand, children anymore. I know I was horrified when I was working in Hong Kong because the children are up 10, 11 o'clock at night easily. And when you look at what different age groups need as far as sleep, it's a lot. So having, you know, a piece of fruit or a healthy little snack at brain food time at school can mean can make a world of difference when it comes to focusing back in for literacy time. Well-resourced and safe schools. Students who have a strong sense of belonging at school, and I guess that comes down to attendance as well. And well-qualified teachers, quality professional learning and development. And I think all my colleagues would agree that what we've been experiencing with BSLA and the University of Canterbury definitely fits that description. So with the Better Start Literacy approach at home, there are several things that you can do. There are weekly handouts that go out home. Sometimes it's in the home learning books, but sometimes it can be on Seesaw or Dojo. And what it does is it lets you know what book your child's class is working on that week. It gives you some vocabulary that we might be talking about and using. And it talks about the two sounds that we're focusing on and some of the focus words for that week. At the bottom of that handout, it will give you some ideas on what you can do to help support that learning. The Ready to Read Phonics Plus titles go home each week. At the beginning, we held off sending them home just because it was the first time we had all 9 classes using these resources. But I know that we are pretty strict about saying they need to go home in a book bag. And that's simply because they're in high demand, but they're also, some of the titles are very hard for us to get our hands on. They're so popular that they can't keep up with the printing. So they need to go home in book bags, and please encourage your child to bring them back regularly so we can keep turning them over and sharing them around the classes. Choosing and reading quality picture books at home with your child, super important. And things that your child is interested in. So here's just an example. This is just an example of the homework, the handouts that you'll see coming home. Okay? And it's got ideas to extend. It's not homework for you. Please don't feel like you've got to go through and do all of these things on here. It really is just suggestions. Okay. There is a Better Start Literacy approach on our website. So if you are not getting, for whatever reason, the Phonics Plus readers home regularly, what you can do instead is you can use this website. There are digital copies of the books. There are recordings, so children can listen to the books being read. When I was having a look through the website, if you're really keen, you can buy some of the resources that the University of Canterbury have, but you don't need any of that really. That's just an example of some of the titles. So the Phonics Plus readers will go home in book bags, but please help to keep them in good condition and return regularly, super important. Readers can be enjoyed for more than one night. Lots of opportunity for discussion and practice, fluency and expression. And I think that's something that another message that we need to send to our young readers is that rereading is really important. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes children rush and go, yep, I've read that, give me more. But actually that habit of rereading the same text is one that will come in handy when you're much older. You think about as an adult when you read something and you know what it's like when you read a paragraph or a page and you think, oh, hold on, what was that about? I'm not sure. You don't just go, oh well, whatever. Your habit is naturally to reread and check for understanding. So getting children to the habit of rereading books is an important one, and it's great for fluency. It's fantastic for fluency and consolidation. It's okay to just read a book to your child if they're tired. Don't fight about it. If they're not wanting to read to you, then read to them. But I think the important thing is, especially with our youngest literacy learners, is that they're developing that habit and that expectation of, this is what we do when we get home after school. There is a time where we are reading together. Either mum and dad, auntie, uncle, grandma, grandpa, somebody is reading to you or you are reading to somebody, but it's always happening. And you can find digital copies of the readers online. So like I said, if you're not getting those readers home regularly for whatever reason, maybe book bags are staying in class by accident or on purpose sometimes, you can go to the website and you can get the digital copies. And remember, it's about having fun, so keep it light. Even I think we as adults know what is at stake. We know how important it is that our children come out reading and writing. Yeah, it's important that you keep things light and that it's fun for young people, and that they enjoy it, because if they're enjoying it, they're motivated. If they love reading, it's, you know, you're halfway there. If you've got a child who's motivated and resilient with reading, it makes things a lot easier for them in their learning journey. So just in summary before we close up and we can talk about what's happening at the tables at the back there, you are an important part of your child's literacy journey. What you do at home can have a powerful impact on their literacy learning. The Better Start literacy approach, which we have started in earnest this year in Year 1 and Year 2, is based on strong research-based evidence. Okay? And that research is ongoing, so it's always being refined. We want young learners to see themselves as readers and writers within the first year of school. And the best way that we can do that is to think about what we're doing in class and ensure that they're getting good quality strategies that are going to be reliable, okay, not just guessing. There are new resources and books, and they're going to be used differently to the older readers, the colour wheel. It's important that reading and literacy activities at home with your child are fun and everybody's happy. And we're on this journey together, because it is a journey. We've only just started down that track with BSLA. So I know a lot of us talk at school and in the staff, and they're like, I don't feel good about this, or this feels really clunky when I do it, or I'm not sure about this anymore. So we're all learning together, teaching, staff and parents. All right, so there are some literacy stations down the back of the hall. We've got 4 tables. At table 1, you can go and you can learn more about our Taumata activities. So that's the phoneme, grapheme, correspondence activities, where we're looking at manipulating the sounds and words. We have another table which has got a collection of quality picture books. And we have got a 3rd table there that's got all the Phonics Plus series and small group readers out, so you can see some of the material that your children will be bringing home. And then on the 4th table, we've just got a collection of other ways, other ideas that you might find helpful that you can use to help your children at home. Okay? So I hope that's been helpful and not too confusing, and I hope I haven't looked too grumpy while I've been doing it. Are we going to finish? No? Okay. All right. So please go down back and ask lots of questions. I've sort of gone through everything super quickly, so you'll get a lot more detail and you'll be able to ask a lot more questions if you've got down the back to the tables. Okay?